Hey folks, this is video one of a build series we're going to do on this 2014 Subaru BRZ. Years ago when the FRS BRZ chassis just came out, we built one. We did a ground up build, painted it inside and out, did a Vortex supercharger, all kinds of stuff. We learned a lot from that. We're going to do things differently on this one, but when we did that, we came out with a bunch of products for the chassis, but at the time people weren't going in depth as much as they are now. It was a very new car. People still owed money on it. They didn't want to tear into it. Most of the people who buy our products are doing really in-depth builds. It's not modification, 1, 2, 3, or 4. It's usually modification 20 or 30 when you're buying our products. So we understand that, and we weren't selling many years ago. We took them off the site when we did a site update, but we've noticed a big popularity increase in them when people are taking them down to bare shell or just drifting them like they're not as worried about messing up their brand new car. We're getting a ton of requests from customers to make products for them again. So we love this chassis. When I built this car years ago, I was so impressed by the design of it. I mean, the car is made to be modified. It's got a great interior, great suspension design. The engine bay is huge. It fits any swap variation that's common and popular. The trans tunnel is huge. There's tons of aftermarket support. The radiator sits really low. The center of gravity is low. I mean, I just love this chassis. It's every bolt's easy to get to. The interior design is awesome, feels great. If you're tall like me, the seats can go really low. Ass chassis, for instance, is really hard to get the seats low because if you're tall like me, you end up in the headliner and you can't see red lights. So that's just a big benefit for me. But this is gonna be a daily driver. So we're not going crazy. We're not gonna go full cage or fuel cell or anything like that. And that kind of, if you know our customer base, you know that most people keep their car streetable that buy ChaseBays products. And most car enthusiasts in general, we consider 90% of car enthusiasts in general are gonna build their car this way. They'll do suspension, they'll do angle, they'll do drop knuckles and all that if you're talking about drifting. They'll do seats, they'll do turbo and all that stuff, but you get to a certain point where the people who are building 500 horsepower and higher cars, full cage, fuel cell, like I mentioned, that's just a small percentage of the car community. So we're gonna build this car like most of our customers would. And that's just kind of the builder that I am anyways. I think that a car, is built to be driven, and it's nice to drive it on the road. There's nothing wrong with building crazy race cars. We've certainly done it, and we enjoy it. But this car, I feel, belongs on the road to be driven a lot. This is every car enthusiast's dream, including mine. When you get all the parts in, and it's rare that you get them all in one place at one time, but we laid them all out as they're on the car. This was really fun for us to do, and it's a great way for us to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it. So let's start over here. This is all the ChaseBays parts. Now there'll be a lot more, and we're developing a lot more. We're gonna do oil cooler kit, handbrake lines, handbrake mounts, front to rear or tank to rail fuel lines with E85 options, our own filter regulator, all that stuff, but that's not shown because we haven't developed it yet. But we do have some stuff here that we've already developed. I'm not gonna go into product descriptions for all this stuff, but we're just gonna hit the basics. This is our new dual piston brake booster delete with bolt-on 6:1 pedal ratio. Here's the brake lines that we've already got dimensions for. We've got some ChaseBays fire sleeve that goes near the exhaust to keep it safe from heat. We've got our catch can, and we'll make a chassis specific one with bracket and lines and everything, but this is just what I assume the fittings will end up being. We've got our windshield washer reservoir, which is great because every car stock windshield reservoir sucks, and this one's small and compact. The windshield washer reservoir gets in the way of oil coolers or brake ducts or whatever things that make our cars better. So this is a really important modification for this car. Coolant overflow, this one on this car is terrible. Moving on, I went with the HKS turbo kit on this. I got really excited about this because I came up in a time where Japanese parts were awesome. Anything made in Japan was awesome. And American made stuff like ours is really great. and we've been able to design stuff for our application that's cool. But there is something nostalgic about these old school JDM companies like Cusco, Tein, HKS, Greddy, all those. So the HKS GT3 turbo kit for this car came out a few years ago, and I've wanted to run it ever since. It's got about the same size turbo as a GT2871, which is kind of a disco potato. So it'll spool fast. We can make 350 or 400 horsepower. I'm just really excited about that. It's got a pretty small intercooler that does the job. You've got the HKS mushroom filter. We're running an HKS oil filter. The kit's installed super easily. We've got a cool HKS heat shield over there. So we're pumped about that. The next part we're running to here is the Tein coilovers. I usually run, you know, some cars, Penske, Reinhardt or Stance has supported us a lot with their R3s with a separate external reservoir. I wanted to run something simple on this car, really, you know, in stock, off the shelf, nothing custom spring rates or valving or anything like that. I thought it would be cool to do that and, you know, support the kind of original JDM companies being involved in this. This is just the Tein Flex Coilovers. It's 6K spring rates. The fronts I might change to 7K. We'll see, but 6K is pretty good, and that'll feel very comfortable for daily driving, and you can take it to the track and have good grip and not too much, not too soft for the corners. I've got, you know, of course, some good lug nuts, Hawk HPS pads with our dual piston brake booster delete. It's very important that you get Hawk HPS or better pads, EBC Yellow, Stop Tech. I can't remember what theirs are called, R71 or something, but just the basic street race pad that has good cold bite. That is the bare minimum for our dual piston brake booster delete. So we always recommend those. So we're using them on the stock calipers. Later, I'll get bigger calipers, but you know, we're keeping a good street car baseline. I've got, this car is 5x100 stock, which doesn't have a great selection of wheels. As the car's gotten more popular and some Subarus and other chassis that have 5x100, they've gotten some better wheel choices, but T-Demand makes front hubs. T-Demand is an old school JDM company. Not that they're not relevant anymore, they're very much relevant. They make a really good 5x114.3 hub adapter. And what's really cool about these cars, again, this goes back to the car being so easy to work on, is the hubs in the front bolt in, the rear hubs bolt in. You don't have to press anything in like you do on BMWs or some other chassis, so that's really cool. But they make a 5x114 conversion that bolts right on, and you have to re-drill the rotors, which we'll get into later. It's super easy. We'll put a template up on the site or in the YouTube description, but that's gonna be cool. We've got these SSR SP3s. I have 3 sets of these. I really like them. Those and Workmeisters are my favorite, which you can see over there on this E30. My thing is just kind of polished lips and white wheels. I don't know, I never get sick of it. That's just what I do. So these will be really cool in the car, and they'll be 5x114.3. And then we've got 7 or 8 cars here that are 5x114.3, and they all generally have the same spec, so we can just share and trade wheels. I really love PBM. This is PBM angle kit and drop knuckles. I really love their products, and we love other companies' stuff too. I mean, FDF and WiseFab, they make great stuff. We run both of their products, but for this car, WiseFab makes an angle kit for this car, but it stretches out. I want to run just stock pulled fenders. I don't want to run any crazy angle. I mean, crazy wide body. So this is cool because this allows you to have a lot of angle without increasing the width of your track. So if we put WiseFab in this car, even with good, small 7.5 or 8 inch wide wheels, you're gonna be poking out, and we don't wanna do that. So with these, they're really cool for street cars because they, I think that even just as it is screwed all the way in, we'll find out later, but I think that it's just barely longer than the stock LCA. So that's just something cool and noteworthy. So we've got their front angle kit, we've got their tie rods. I'm running I think it's a Hotchkiss front sway bar, just the biggest front sway that I could find on this particular suspension design. It's basically the same as 240s. big sway bar is key. It really helps with the front grip and how I drive. And this pair in box is just motor mount, so we can keep it solid. We've got a Cusco rear tie bar. I forget their terminology on it, but it just ties into the chassis and the subframe. So we can move on. This is, since I just mentioned the motor mounts, this is a white line trans mount. Next to that, there's a pair in box. This is a drift button. It's the one thing I'm opening, I guess. But it's just a simple drift button. Good old classic easy modification for locking the rear wheels. We're gonna make a handbrake, of course, but, or we're gonna make a handbrake specific mount. But for now, you know, before we tear into the interior or do any cutting and welding, we're just gonna do that. This next part is simple, and this could be easy to make, but I just wanted to buy this. This is a Veris Engineering pedal spacer. So this sits behind, it just spaces out the accelerator pedal. It's a simple modification that is a kind of a problem on the FRS BRZ chassis. The pedal sits, you know, if your brake is here, the pedal sits way down here. And that's not good for heel toe. I find myself even just driving in the street, sliding my foot over to hit the brakes and I hit the pedal. So that is one little flaw, one design flaw that they made when making this car, is that I like when the pedal sits right next to the brake, so it's easy to get to. And it doesn't put it too close either, because that's bad. So this is just a cool, easy mod worth mentioning. Again, this is a Cusco, I believe, rear power brace, tie brace. I'm gonna get more of these. These are really cool. I believe they're chromoly, so they don't add too much weight, but they add some rigidity. And anything Cusco is just pretty cool in general. Greddy hood shocks. Don't ever buy the cheap hood shocks for any car. Just buy something legitimate like Greddy. It's always going to be actually chassis specific, nothing universal, cheap and flimsy. This is a P3 gauge. I like the look of gauges, you know, strung over a dash or cool gauge pods and all that. At the same time, I want to keep the interior really simple and minimalistic. So this is cool. This is a driver's side, left-hand drive driver's side. It's basically a gauge pod. It fits in the AC heat vent. And then it displays everything here. It connects to the OBD2 port, so you get everything that the OBD2 port's gonna read out. So you can get boost, you can get speed, you can get even air-fuel ratio, since this car has a stock wideband. And it has 3 analog ports where you can add something else. So I'll probably do fuel pressure and oil pressure, maybe oil temp or something like that. So just I'll pick wisely on those two. But this stuff's cool. I mean, chassis specific stuff like this is really cool because it's just easy to install. And again, street car. So these, of course, are the new Bride Stradia 3 Low Maxes. These are awesome seats. Anybody who's ever been into anything Japanese loves Bride seats. These are really good for tall folks like me. They're reclinable, which is great for a street car. They still hold you in. I've drifted with these. I mean, gone into a turn at 80, you know, however many G-forces that is on some sticky tires. I didn't feel like I was in a stock seat at all. These are really rad seats. And they've gotten even better. The Stradia 2 to the Stradia 3, they're even better. What's really cool is these are not limited by my long torso and being tall. The Brides, the Vios and the Zetas, the harness holes sit lower, so it's actually really low on my back, and that's not good. That's not safe. So these actually sit, if I sit in them, it sits at a good part to where if I did get into a crash, it wouldn't mess me up. So I really like these. And it's a street car and these are reclinable, so I can safely use a stock seat belt, but I probably will get some green Takatas just because that's the cool Japanese look and styling that we're going for. But yeah, I'm super excited about these. I've already got these seat rails on them. It's just something that we put together and made. It's just the FRS. This is another great thing that the FRS BRZ chassis did. The 240, for instance, the S chassis, their seat brackets, it's a a bump in the chassis, and it makes the seat sit super tall like I mentioned before. What's really cool about these is it's similar to the E36, E46 chassis where it basically is flat on the bottom of the seat pan. So you can see it's just all flat. There's a slight bend here, but it's all flat. So you can make these super easily and then use some universal sliders. Might have to drill a couple holes, but I got this together pretty fast. I put these things together, fabbed it up. I didn't have to weld anything besides this and this. So pretty good stuff there. Very, very easy to mount seats for this car, unlike other chassis. So we'll move on to the rear section of the car. Wheels again for a second. The fronts we run 17 by 7.5 plus 10, I believe. People get blown away when they hear 7.5, that we run 7.5 wheels, because people run 10s or 11s or whatever. I'm able to run 225s on that without stretching, and that gives me more front grip, because when you start rolling tires, when you start stretching tires, you're losing front grip. So 7.5 and 8 is actually a great front tire choice for a drift car. And you don't poke, you don't run the risk of going outside of the fender. If you go out, I mean, if you do poke, you can't run your car as low. I like to run my cars fairly low, not as low as some people, but when you run a skinnier wheel with the proper offset, it's really good, because you can, like this car over here, you can sit flush. Now his fender got a little beat up, so we won't focus on that, but that's the look that you want if you're building the kind of car that I'm building. So just worth mentioning that we run 17 by 7.5 wheels with 225. In the rear, again, we're not running over fenders or wide body, so you can get with the right offset. This is 18 by 9. I believe it's plus 15 or plus 20, somewhere around there. I can get specific specs and put it in the description, but you can see I get a good 3-inch lip. It doesn't look like a stock wheel or anything like that. There's plenty of lip, and I'm still not running super wide wheels that have to poke or have to be cambered or any super crazy chassis modifications to make work. I can fit 245s and 255s on this without not stretching, of course, or not going over. And I don't do that. I run 235s because it saves so much money. If you can run 235s and make your car have mechanical grip, you'll save thousands of dollars depending on how many drift events you do a year. Because every 10 millimeters that tire goes up, 225, 35, 45, and so on, you're increasing your expenses exponentially. So I like to run a 235, maybe 245 if it's a certain track or something. Sometimes even 225 if it's just a fun day or something. So I think these are actually 225. Yeah, these are 225, and you can see they're not stretched. And I can run, and this is all tire design too, but it has some curve here, but this is about the proper size tire. But yeah, you can run 235, 245 on here, no problem. When people run 10, 11 inch wide wheels, they have to run big tires. They might have too much grip for the track. I could go on and on, but I think you get the point. So we'll move on. This is more PBM stuff. So this is a drop knuckle. On the FRS BRZ chassis, there's a kind of a problem in the rear, and it's okay with the car being stock. I know I've really inflated the egos of the designers of this car, but there is another little flaw. The axles break once you lower this car. It just puts it at a bad angle. So these few modifications on this really, they allow you to have more rear grip, but it's also just a kind of insurance for your axles and everything in place. So these are drop knuckles. I believe they're 25 millimeter drop knuckles, maybe more, but they're just PBM drop knuckles, forged, and they've got dual caliper brackets. I think they did FRS and Z32. That's why there's two mounting positions there. And then, and I'll go more into the axles in a minute, but these are just 2008 Subaru WRX STI rear hubs. In the front, we had to buy the T-Demand ones because there's nothing in the front that matches up. They had to make it, but these are just stock Subaru hubs, 2008 STI hubs, and that allows you to run 5x114, and we'll just re-drill the rear rotors. I'm still waiting on 2 arms from PBM that they had backordered for a couple weeks, so we'll have those soon. But I'm running all 4 of their rear arms. Everything will be spherical, so it'll be very solid. These, I believe these go as a pair because they move the mounting position of this upper control arm for better geometry, because, you know, as a car compresses, it can change camber and toe and all that, and it'll give you less or more grip, generally less grip, more tire wear, all that stuff as you're compressing the suspension. So these drop knuckles fix a lot of that geometry, and they allow for what they call anti-squat, which is it tries to keep it at whatever your settings are. With your zero camber, zero toe, they keep it right at that as the car compresses. So they move some of this stuff. So this comes as a pair. I believe this and the other two arms can just go on anything. But back to the axles, we're running their subframe risers and their diff risers. So between the two of these, I think the diff moves up an inch, and then you're moving these down. So you're getting the axle angle from something like this to something like this, because again, the axle angle is just a problem with this chassis that these 3 or 4 products really fix. I can put in the description what all the exact specs are, at least just a link to the products. But those are just means to an end modifications, and again, sphericals and anything solid is always going to be better once you're drifting. And really, it doesn't make the car any shittier to drive. It's a bit louder. You'll hear the diff whining a little bit, but the subframe and sphericals, it really doesn't add much noise as long as you keep them oiled or greased up. They won't click. Maybe occasionally you'll hear it, but it really just increases a bit of the diff noise. And if you have a non-welded diff and you have an actual LSD, which this car has a Torsen LSD, which is fantastic. I mean, I don't think we're going to do anything to it. I think it should lock up all the time. And any other BRZ, FRS, 8.6 drift guys, they haven't welded theirs. But if you don't have a welded diff and you have that LSD, you won't hear too much of the noise increase with these solid bushings. But anyways, we already talked about the Teins. These are the Tein Flexes. It's just the rears. We're running the HKS Hi-Power single exhaust. It's really lightweight for what it is. I don't know anything about it, why it's lightweight, but a lot of catbacks can be quite heavy, and this isn't too heavy. This has, I think it's called a Reinholz resonator. And this particular engine, the FA20 Flat 4, can really sound like shit when you're doing equal length. Even when you add a turbo, it can have a lot of raspiness. It can have a lot of, really just a lot of drone and bad noise going on. And so this Reinholz resonator is gonna eliminate that. And HKS designed this. They didn't design the Reinholz resonator, obviously, but they put it in there to take up some of that raspiness and some of that drone. And if you watch their videos and they have this exhaust, the HKS Hi-Power single exhaust, it doesn't have any rasp or drone to it. So that's really important to me. It being a daily, and when you have a wife or girlfriend, you don't want to annoy them when you're out for a drive. So this is great. This is good for a daily driver. I think that covers it. Oh, one last thing. This tiny little part here is from Veris. And you know, we're doing injectors. We're doing Deechworks 700cc injectors for the turbo and a Deechworks drop-in fuel pump. But this tiny little guy here, this drops in, and we'll show it later in the build series, but this drops into a tiny little portion on the fuel pump housing. When we do the fuel pump modification, this drops in there and eliminates fuel starvation. So this is just a little baffle, little door, and I guess it was easy for them once they wanted to design it, but it allows fuel to stay in the housing under cornering and braking and acceleration. It's really cheap too. So if anybody's doing any sort of track or drifting, I recommend getting this. It installs with a fuel pump in probably 30 minutes, so it's a really good part. And in conclusion on all this, I just want to say that none of these products were sponsored. There are other options for stuff, and you're free to choose whatever you want, obviously. None of these products are sponsored. These are just products that we wanted to run and companies that we support. We love other coilover companies. We love other suspension companies. We love other seat companies. There's no affiliation or anything. These are just the products that we chose to run. So if we're running these, we truly like them on our builds. So today, all we're really doing is just putting the suspension and exhaust on. It's just a good base point to start. Again, this is my daily driver for now. I like to get to know the car really well so we can make the best products possible, find all the weak points, stuff like that. So right now we're just putting the Tein coilovers on and the HKS exhaust, and that's just all we're gonna do.